DJI releases a drone, total chaos, there's opinions all over the place, as many people are making YouTube videos hating this thing. Interestingly enough, if you ask Mavic 3 and Mavic 3 Cine owners in a poll how their experience is, it seems like they really like this drone, so what's going on here? To summarize all the drama on this drone's release, there's 4 really big things that are causing issues. 1, people don't like the price. 2, the drone is visibly not finished. You click on something and it says, hey, the feature's coming soon. Panoramic photos and hyperlapses are missing. Those are 2 big important ones to me. 3, issues like flyaways and drifting have been reported, even though they're rare. 4, overall weirdness in the app that basically says it was kind of just rushed out the door. It's being sold for holiday sales, and we're basically a bunch of beta testers. First of all, the drone community has a lot of astronomers, not a lot of astronauts. Look at somebody's work and decide if they suck before you listen to them. I just got back from spending a week filming with this thing in California, and that's coming right off of using an Inspire 2 to get this quality of footage for way more money. I'm anticipating a lot of thumbs down on this video because there are a lot of hobbyists who do not like the price, but number 1, is it overpriced? No, it's not. I've been a camera operator, motion graphics artist, full-time video editor for like a decade. Anybody in film world can tell you how much equipment costs. This is a flying 5.1K 4/3 inch Hasselblad camera that shoots raw photos, hyperlapses, it's stabilized on a gimbal, and it will fly home to you, shoots ProRes. All these things individually are more expensive on the ground. These drones have always been underpriced. DJI invited a ton of hobbyists into the space with a $1,250 Mavic 2 Pro. I don't know why it was priced that low. They gave away way too much of the price, and that was like the top of the line drone for a really long time. I've talked about this problem, underpricing for clients, for a long time. When you give yourself away for that price, people demand it and feel entitled to it from then on. Nobody's going to say, I'm just happy to get all these features in a flying camera. The first thing they're going to do is, well, why was it less than half the price? That's not fair. Even though hobbyists just got an Air 2S that's way overpowered for $1,000, 5.4K on a 1-inch sensor. Unbelievable for $1,000. That's not enough. They don't want that. They need to get the very best thing, which is this drone they waited for a while. Now they're mad that it's priced the way it should be. Number 2, drone's not finished. Yes, that's very true, and DJI, I guess, has been telling people, hey, the features are coming soon. It's not all there. That's just really frustrating because I wanted to test a hyperlapse on the Micro Four Thirds camera. If I have to wait a couple months, it's not the end of the world. Panoramic photos not being available though, I think that's pretty crippling because that's my biggest advantage against, I guess, other photographers. Getting weirder angles, way more data, shooting like 120 megapixel photos, stitching them together. It's not the end of the world because just like with ground cameras back in the day, I can just do it manually. I know most people aren't going to know how to do that though. Thought it would be a pretty simple feature. I guess it's just not ready then, so we have to wait for it, whatever. To me, it's a tool for making money. I would rather have a mostly working Mavic 3 right now that does its one job really well, which is filming 5.1K footage, and be able to use it for a couple months until the update, than have none at all and have to wait until next year. DJI is just a marketing focused company. The only reason we've had drones this capable, this fast, multiple times a year is because they have a huge push on marketing. They know how to maximize sales, but that's why we get it cheap to begin with. They wanted to hit holiday sales, and that's a huge chunk of money for a drone like this. So fine, I guess I understand. If you were buying this as your only drone and you need it to work tomorrow though, yeah, I can see how that's super frustrating. They know that when this drone came out though, everybody got really mad and this was a dumpster fire with how many issues there were. So they've extended the warranty for all the beta testers pretty much. So nice of them to at least address it because I'm pretty sure they can see how bad the backlash was. Normally a drone comes out, everybody's blown away and they knock it out of the park. And this being their most hyped launch, ironically, just so many things went weird about it. I've heard people complain about drifting and flyaways. That happens with every drone though, and it's usually because they turn the drone on, they don't give it time to connect to satellites for GPS, then they try and take off. With the Mavic 3 though, I had this thing on a pier, I turned it on, it was flying in the air probably like 30 seconds, trying to change the aperture, and I looked over and it was drifting towards the pier and over people. So if it was a little lower, it would have sliced 10, 15 people's heads clean off, not really, but it was really weird to look over and see people like, oh, look, a drone, when I wasn't controlling it. So that, I mean, that's the first time that's happened with me. I was telling it to fly the other way and it wouldn't listen to me. I had to fight it to get it to stop. But I know now to just be a little more careful with it. The thing that people complain about more is trying to hold still and the drone gaining altitude. Maybe that's a GPS thing too. I'm sure it'll be fixed with the firmware update. How many times have I said that now? Just to clarify, there is one thing this drone is doing really, really well. That's shooting beautiful 5.1K, 24 frames a second footage. So the rest of the DJI team who worked on software and marketing and whatever, half of them were gone for COVID or something, or all their wives died. And that one dude in charge of just getting 24 frames a second footage, He was there every day and he did a fantastic job of making sure this thing runs well. Super, super good dynamic range. I love that you can see this many clouds with this much foreground at the same time. Outside of that though, there's so many goofy things about this drone. This isn't just because I have a Cine version either. It basically makes no difference between H.265 and ProRes. This is also using the normal color profile and editing a little bit of color in Premiere. So with my touch-ups, I'm very happy with what I can get out of this thing. And the first time I filmed the sunset, I was super, super happy to see how well it handled shadows. Everything looks super clear and vivid. Weird app features, that's very true. For whatever reason, they decided to go with DJI Fly instead of the other app. And maybe it's just me, but it feels very basic. It feels more like a Mini 3 Pro than it does a Mavic 3 when you put it in an app like DJI Fly. When I want to tap the screen to change the aperture though, the area is so small for my Shrek fingers that I'm basically just tapping autofocus and it takes like 3 seconds to do. So every time I miss, I have to wait for it to stop autofocusing. So that's really frustrating. I've figured out some workarounds though, like anybody who uses this drone a ton is gonna find the weird little quirks about it. Annoying, but I'm sure it'll be fixed with the firmware update. That telephoto lens also doesn't feel finished. You can only shoot 4K 30 frames a second on full auto. That really makes it feel like a funsy feature and not like it's a drone with 2 cameras. It's a really cool feature, but it just feels like a fun feature. However, my opinions changed after a couple of weeks because there are a couple of situations where I've gotten really nice shots that I would use in something professional, but it's very hit or miss. For being that far of a telephoto, and I really had to scoot back the first time I used it because it's way closer to zoom than I was anticipating. It is really well stabilized for being that zoomed in. I mean, I put it in Cine and it just does a good job of keeping steady. So that's very impressive. It's just being forced to shoot 4K 30 frames a second is weird. One thing I have to give a 10 out of 10 on this drone is the experience. When I park the car, pick up the drone, I know they force a smart controller on you, but I only have 2 things to worry about now. And without having to attach a phone, it just makes life so much easier. Turn it on FLYAWAY, and it just is such a better experience. I mean, compared to the Inspire 2, everybody's looking. It's such a hassle. It barely fits in your back seat. You've got to rebuild the thing every time you move it. The DJI bondage strap is the best thing I've used to keep a gimbal steady. I hope that it doesn't get made fun of online enough that they don't make another one because I really love this thing. It's so snug. I looked everywhere in the case and I couldn't find the ball gag, but that's okay. The drone is cool, but the award winner is the case. I mean, it turns into a backpack. It's really heavy duty. The problem is, after carrying it around for a week, I realized I don't need everything in it. It's cool to house all your stuff, and it's really high quality. I just don't want to lug that around because it's not like I'm putting a laptop in there too. It's just a drone. So the nice thing about the Mavic 3 is having a drone of this quality that I can fit in a Ninja Turtles lunchbox. But those 2 things together have made this experience like 10 out of 10. Anytime I see something nice and I go, oh, I want to shoot that, I just pull over, take off out of my hand because it's small, and just fly over there and see how it looks. I'm shooting in normal mode. There's a D-Log, can't get it to really look that great, and even with tinkering with it manually using the DJI LUT, I still prefer shooting in normal, being like 90% of the way there and adjusting lightly. The other reason I like normal mode is because they have this weird software HDR that immediately I wanted to hate, but after comparing it, shooting D-Log and normal back and forth, the only time I sat forward in my seat and was like delighted and tickled was when I was shooting in normal and adjusting lightly in the editor. So I've been shooting normal and it's been a really good experience so far. I hope with the firmware update we get more color options because as of right now, everything you can't control outside of that. You can't control contrast sharpness. The contrast is typically the first thing I turn down. As far as flight settings, I can make it a little smoother by lowering the settings in Cine mode because I like it really slow. However, in the old app for the Inspire and the Mavic 2 Pro, you could really get into particular settings for the braking and the gain, the EXP. I can live without that though. It's not the end of the world because Cine, tripod mode, whatever, it does work really well. And I like that you can just flick it over on the remote as well. My biggest immediate gripe is that this is a really short lens. I want to have 5.1K on a slight crop the way the Mavic 2 Pro had a 5K sensor and it had 2 shooting modes, so you still got full resolution 4K. It was just cropped in on the sensor a little bit, so it wound up being full 4K, but that feels like you have a second lens that way. It looks more cinematic. I always shot in this mode. I never used the wide mode. This one only gives you one. I really, really want that to come with a firmware update. It's too wide in my opinion, especially for photos. If you flip the photo mode, this is like the widest camera ever. I want to have a crop shooting mode. So far though, I've been shooting in 5.1K, editing on a 4K timeline, and that way I can just crop in like 120% or something. I just wish that I could shoot that way from the beginning. If they can do a 2x zoom on the Mini 2 and get it to look like passable, I really hope that I can shoot it like a 1.4 zoom or something on this drone with a bigger sensor. I don't care about battery life at all, but this one is so good that I have to mention it. Like I haven't even had to think, oh, maybe I should start charging after flying it out for a 10-minute shot or something. I have the internal 1TB terabyte, so transfer speeds do take a while. I've just filmed all week and it was like 20 minutes or something. Not the end of the world, it just means I have to carry the drone upstairs, turn it on, and plug it in. After having used it for a couple of weeks now, I have to say I'm getting pretty attached. I know it's kind of an abusive relationship. The two bottom lines: one, when I look at this thing, do I get a really big headache the way I do with the Inspire 2? No, I look at this thing and I'm getting attached to it the way I did with the Mavic 2 Pro, and I had a ton of good experiences with that drone. Number two, the biggest bottom line: when there is a really pretty sunset outside of my house tonight, what is the drone I'm grabbing? It's the Mavic 3. That's the one I'm the most confident is going to get the best picture. The Inspire can compete with it. The Inspire can get cool angles and different lenses, but it's such a hassle. And this one, I'm confident enough now that I'm going to get a vivid, beautiful image really easily. Even with all the weird issues in the software and the quirks you have to work out with this drone, that speaks volumes. I think that's the only reason DJI put it out the way it is right now. And they say the best camera is the one you have with you. I will take this thing around with me in my Ninja Turtles lunchbox. I won't want to do that with the Inspire 2. Biggest recommendation, wait till January. There's going to be some really big updates, panoramic photos, hyperlapses being the most important ones. And I think in general, I mean, once they've had this thing out and everybody's been using it nonstop, they're going to get the most feedback and data and be able to adjust the picture. So wait till January.